This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome back, everybody, to Wrestling Omakase. It is episode number 139, and this week I'm very pleased to be joined by one of the faces that runs the place, the King of Banter, Mr. Joe Lanza. Hi, Joe.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good now that we're finally got these microphones working, and it was a journey, but we're here and we're recording, so that's good. Hopefully it's gonna keep working.
Technical issues, you know. at least there's plenty of time to sort them out.
That's true. None of us have anything to do.
I don't know about you. I got nowhere to be, so
yeah.
You work it out, and here we are. But I'm just happy to be here, and it's kind of cool to not be talking about current events for once on a podcast. I mean, not that I don't love doing the flagship, but, a change of pace every now and then is good. So, we'll talk about some old matches today.
Yeah, so I'll introduce a new format and everything and talk about why I brought that on. But I guess how are you holding up so far in this fucking coronavirus world? I know it's not a huge difference to you, right? Like you did work from home a lot and you didn't go out a lot, right? I mean, you're more of a homebody.
I mean, it's not that much of a change for me.
Yeah.
I did a lot of work from home. This just cuts out the little bit of traveling that I see. When I did leave the house for work, it would be like long journeys, 4 or 5 hour drives, 10-hour round trips. Those are just out now. So now I just do everything from home. And other than that, I mean, I kind of like being in the house anyway. So I'm mostly a homebody. So it's not like a gigantic change for me to be in the house all the time now. And, because my wife does work that's still considered essential, she's still going to work and everything. So my household might be the most normal out of anybody's in terms of, not much having, changed. But yeah, it's still tense and weird. And, you go grocery shopping and there's just this thickness in the air. Like nobody wants to, like everyone knows there's something going on, but no one wants to acknowledge it. And it's just, I don't know, man. We're living in a movie. So yeah. It's bizarre times. It's a huge difference for me. I mean, like myself and my girlfriend and, her mom, we all live in this apartment together and none of us did any work from home before this started. I mean, we were all, working in her mother works in the South Bronx. Nicole and I work in the same office in Manhattan, and none of us did any work from home ever. So we were commuting every day. So it is a big fucking change for us that we're all home 24/7. And I mean, we're lucky. We all still have jobs. We all they're letting us work from home, and it doesn't seem like they're going to cut us anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, it is a big change, and we're also like consummate New Yorkers that eat out all the time and go to bars all the time. Not all the time, but like go to bars a couple times a month, and that's obviously all out. So it's a big change for us. But I'm sure it is for people listening. Just being together in the house all the time when that was almost never the case for more than like maybe a 24-hour period.
Right.
It's got
like we we would stay home some weekends, but like a lot of weekends, either I go and visit my dad and my friends in New Jersey like once a month, and that's obviously out now. It's just a very weird adjustment.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and then like to transition, I guess, to, well, what have you been filling the time with? I guess, have you been, what I found, and this is probably bad to say as a podcast host, but I am listening to way less podcasts because I listen to so many podcasts, like during my commute, on the bus. Like I would just listen to, because I had a long commute. I had like 1 to 1.5 hour, each way, and I would listen to a ton of podcasts, and during those commutes, and it's really cut into my podcast time, and I've had to force myself to listen to stuff, I guess, at home, because it's not something I'm used to doing. But I don't know if you're the same way. Is that what you would fill those 4 to 5 hour trips with a lot of podcasts?
Yeah, and you're not alone. Podcast listening is down across the board, and that was something that was surprising to a lot of people, but it really isn't, for the reasons that you just said. Because a lot of people tend to do podcasts on their commute, and when the commute is eliminated, their routine is disrupted, and it's down across the board. We had an advertiser, pull all of their ads from our network, and reschedule them for like November or whatever, because now even the advertisers don't want to pay, because podcast listening is down like 25-30%, and that's the reason right there. I mean, for me, yeah, I would listen to them on my long car trips, but I still listen to a ton of radio shows and podcasts, and I still do that, in the house. But overall it's down. So people, this is kind of like a side hustle for people like me and you, but people who do this for a living, this is just yet another area of people who are being hit, because now, the advertising dollars just aren't the same as they were before all this started.
Yeah. But I mean, look, I will do this if fucking 2 people listen. I don't really give a shit. So you don't have to worry about, no one listening has to worry about me taking the hiatus or whatever. But I totally get it if you're either professional and you have to find something else to do, or if it's just not worth it to you anymore with, listenership down. But yeah, I mean, I totally get it, because in my own personal life, I've probably listened to less podcasts in the past few weeks than I ever have before. So I find myself reading a lot more books. I don't know if that's just like, books are very easy for me to, I guess, like really engross myself in and not like have my thoughts wander. So I don't know. Books have been a good escape for me. I just finished reading. I don't know if do you know the story of Theranos? Do you know anything about that, Elizabeth? You don't know. You missed all that stuff with that crazy woman who did the blood testing company, and it turned out to be a complete fucking scam. They did like the HBO documentary.
Know nothing about it.
Okay, you should watch the HBO documentary. It's an incredible fucking story. I think it's like called, oh god, The Inventor, and it's like out for blood in Silicon Valley. But it's an amazing, incredible story. But yeah, I watched that documentary last year, and I meant to read the book, and then the book was like $3.99 on Amazon for some reason. So the book was so good, I ended up spending like 8 hours straight reading it. And yeah, if anyone hasn't read that book, I think it's called Bad Blood. I would highly recommend it. That was a great distraction one day. But I mean, it's just an incredible story. I
got like 4 books. I got like 4 books I bought like 8 years ago that I still haven't cracked open, and I'm just staring at them because now is the time. But honestly, I'm filling a lot of my time with watching wrestling, and it's weird because I'm actually watching more wrestling now because there's so little new wrestling, but I feel pressure to watch all of the new wrestling and all of the wrestling that's still going. So now I'm like, wait a minute, I'm now somehow I'm spending more time watching wrestling, even though there's less wrestling content. It's all backwards.
Yeah. But I've been watching a lot more retro stuff, but so that transitioned nicely into, I guess, the format here, and like, why I decided to do this. So basically, I cannot fucking stand the empty arena shows anymore. I mean, look, the U.S. wrestling, I'm not the biggest fan of modern American wrestling anyway. I don't think that's a breaking news to any listeners here, but I could not watch those WWE or AEW shows more than like a week. Like I gave up pretty quickly, and I still haven't watched anything from Mania. I don't know. There's something about that that's just like it's like something I didn't like that much to begin with. And now in front of these fucking empty buildings and like the fucking cinematic bullshit, like Matt Hardy teleporting and fucking even like all this other shit that they did at Mania. I mean, I have less than no interest. I mean, it's not wrestling to me. So I don't fucking care. It's not something I'd ever want to watch. Which I don't really think you disagree with, although I haven't listened to the new flagship yet, so I'm not sure if maybe you guys gushed about Mania for all I doubt it, but
it's the empty arena stuff is hard to watch. You get tired of it quickly, and now I'm to the point where it's like there's the good empty arena stuff is really only good by empty arena standards.
Right. That's a great point.
It's not good, but like the recent All Japan show, and I think some of the Dynamites have been good by the standards that, that of the day that were dealt with here, but they're not like ideal or good. I wouldn't call them good under normal circumstances. So
yeah,
and the rest of it has just been very hard to watch, especially the WWE stuff is so dry and hard to watch and soulless. And it's a task.
I mean, the Noah, and that's a good transition. Like even like the Puro stuff, I guess we could have done another week, based on this empty arena Puro stuff. Although it seems like they're even putting a stop to that now. But like the empty arena Puro stuff, like I don't know, it has become a drag for me to even sit through that. And that stuff I normally like, when it's not in front of an empty arena. But yeah, I'm like I've gotten way behind now in the empty arena, even the Japanese stuff, and I don't know, it's just not compelling to me, and I think it's a very poor distraction. And I think that's ultimately why when you look at these TV ratings in America and they're falling, it's like it doesn't take your mind off of anything. I mean, you're it's basically like you're just confronted with how wrong this all is and how we're all living through this, really terrible period because like it's just not it's not wrestling, I mean, it's this weird fucking compromised thing they're putting on the air to have something on the air, and it doesn't distract you from what we're going through. It really like you might as well watch the fucking news at that point, when you look at these ratings and see the news doing so super well. It's because if you're gonna look for distraction, you're gonna put on fucking Netflix or Hulu or whatever. You're not gonna put on this empty arena bullshit.
It's the opposite of a distraction. It's a reminder. It's because it's just a stark reminder of what's going on. And you could absolutely lose yourself in a TV show or a movie or something. And but you cannot lose yourself in this because they're smacking you right in the face that this thing is still going on because there's no fucking fans there. And it's, so yeah, I agree. I mean, these people who are claiming that it's, we need this because it's a distraction from what's going on. It's the total opposite. It's just it's an instant reminder because it's this weird, creepy vibe, and you're questioning why they're even doing it, and you're wondering whether you should even be supporting it. It's just weird all around.
Yeah. So, I mean, and definitely that's another element to it too. And now with fucking WWE going live for every show, which is just like, I think you can kind of get away with saying, okay, well, if they're taping a month in advance like AEW did, I wouldn't. I mean, if it was me, I would not run anything. I get why AEW is doing it because they need this TV deal, but I would not I would come down the side of safety, and that's just me. But like that's still way more defensible than fucking going live 3 times a week. That's insane. But the networks are forcing them. Then I don't know. It's very, very crappy.
None of it's ideal, but if you bring people together and tape 6 weeks worth of TV and you're telling anyone who doesn't want to come or isn't comfortable coming that they don't have to, and you're using a skeleton crew as it is and just using the people who are willingly, which is the way AEW handled it, which, may not have been perfect, but it's a lot different than bringing people in every week and shooting live television every week. And it's just, you're exposing people X amount of times additionally that you don't need to. I mean, you could have just filmed everything in one day and exposed everyone once. Now you're going to expose everybody every week. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So
yeah,
it's a horrible idea. And I'm sure that they're going to get shut down at some point. And they can't continue to fly under the radar while everything else around us gets shut down. and just snub their nose at this, no matter how lax Florida has been. I think at some point, this isn't going to last. I have to think that they're going to get, or that the wrestlers themselves are going to say, hey, look, enough's enough. Something is going to break here. This isn't going to continue.
Yeah. So, but that's a long-winded way to say this is why Omakase is transitioning to doing some retro content for a while. Things in Japan don't look great right now either. And, it's what I think a lot of people were worried about. And we definitely talked about it on the show a few weeks ago that, like, when they did that DDT Judgment Korakuen, and they did the Stardom Korakuen and a few other shows, and like your big Japans that never shut down in front of fans towards the end of March. It's like, well, I don't know. This seems a little early. And it was a little early because everything is, they're in a state of emergency now. They're taking it more seriously now, it seems like, with the Olympics now off the table. There isn't this perverse, incentive structure to under-test. They're now testing a lot more people. If you look at these trackers, it's like 4,000 people a day they're testing, which is still not a ton per capita, I don't think, but like it's a lot more than they were testing, even a few weeks ago. So, I mean, they were struggling to break 4 digits a lot of days. So, yeah, I mean, like it's, the state of emergency through May 6th. I know, like, I think people should be prepared for, April to be very light. And then who knows if they'll be able to come back with fans during May. And then I think you're probably looking, if I had to guess from read, and I read a lot about the situation in Japan, obviously, I think the most realistic for running shows in front of fans again is like late May, probably early June, which would really obviously put, and it could be later. It depends on how things go, but that would really put, Dominion and DT Peter Pan and all that in jeopardy. But I mean, you can't fuck with this, it's just this is a fucking global pandemic, and, Japan clearly doesn't have it under control. Not that it's still not as bad as it is here, but I mean, you can't be running shows in front of thousands of people right now. That's pretty clear.
What a weird thing to live through.
I know.
I mean, no one's really lived through this in 100 years. Spanish flu. You got to go back to that, I guess, for the last time. I mean, just a weird thing to live through, yeah. and a lot of the people, most of the people living through this, live through 9/11, and but it's a completely different animal. But when we're all really old, we'll have some very bizarre stories to tell to people who didn't live through any of this stuff. But yeah. This is just weird and creepy. I'm just looking out my window, and everybody's cars in the driveway, and there's nobody on the street, and it's just
yeah.
And for you, it must be even more bizarre because it's New York City, and it's got to be even. I'm just in the suburbs, out in the middle of nowhere, Texas.
If you saw where I lived, it looks way more suburban than you'd think for the Bronx and New York proper. Like I live in people who have lived here, who have come here, are like, oh, this is almost like the suburbs. Just a little closer together. So it's not like I live in downtown Manhattan. That must be really fucking weird.
Yeah.
Just walking around like a ghost town downtown Manhattan. But it's still weird looking out the window and just seeing like you're saying, all these cars here. I mean, just like tons and tons of cars where normally if you looked out the window on a Saturday afternoon, I mean, you'd see probably like a half as many, if that, because people be out living their lives, which nobody has that right now. So, but yeah, the 9/11 comparison is interesting to me because I was 15 years old for 9/11, and to be honest, I barely remember and my life changing very much from that. I mean, I lived in New Jersey, so I lived very close to it, as you did, I'm sure, at the time. But I don't know. Maybe I was just a little bit too young to really feel like a proper impact from it, but it just kind of felt like, I remember one really weird day in high school where they put us all in an auditorium and, the day of it happening. And I think a couple students did have parents that worked there. And, I remember they were very distraught, but for the rest of us, it was like, wow, this is a thing. I mean, we're just a bunch of kids. We don't know what's going on. It's just like, all right, whatever. And, I remember within like a week, it kind of felt like back to normal, but
there was that same thickness in the air, but for different reasons. Like now I go out once a week to go grocery shopping. It's the only time I leave the house. So I'll go grocery shopping and you see other people in the store and it's like you're just side-eyeing each other because not that you're afraid of the people, but you're just more cautious. You're afraid to walk. People are afraid to walk past each other. Like I'll be in the aisle in the grocery store and people will do the big U-turn when they see me in the aisle. Like I'm not walking past that guy. You're just trying to stay away from each other. And it's weird because they're telling us to stay away from each other. So it's not that people are being rude. We're just following the instructions, but yet it still feels like we're being rude to one another. Like, oh, I don't want to walk past you.
All this time I probably should have mentioned too, I probably had it. I mean,
yeah, right. Happened. You may have had it. Exactly.
I think I'm about as certain as someone could be without having been tested. Because first of all, I'm in New York, where apparently it's been here now. They're saying since mid-February, and it's all over the place. And if I didn't have it, I had the worst fucking flu of all time. So like, I can't imagine that I didn't have it. I mean, I guess I'll know for sure whenever they roll out this antibody testing you're talking about, which is going to be able to, like they'll test you for the antibodies, so they'll know if you had it in the past. But yeah, man, it was fucking awful. And I mean, when I described my symptoms to the doctor, she was pretty confident that I probably had it. But they were like, yeah, don't come and get tested though. Just stay, as long as you can breathe, stay at home and get better. I'm like, okay. Like, that's where we're at, I guess. Or if you can breathe, then we don't want to fucking test you. You just stay home and recover. But yeah, I mean, it was it was about like a 10 or 12 day period that was pretty bad, but like really for like 3 or 4 days was like really when it was like just the worst fucking. I mean, I've had some health problems in the past, so like I have other things I can compare it to, but like this was really, really awful. I mean, like it's one of those feelings where you're just like, it just feels like you're going to be sick forever. And like you just can't get that thing out of your head of like, this is never going to end. I'm going to fucking die. Like it just feels so awful when you're in the middle of it. And then finally one day you just start feeling better. And you're like, oh, okay. But yeah.
It's every time I cough or sneeze or have a runny nose, I think I've got the thing. Like that's the other thing too. Like any minor symptom, like you start wondering, oh no, I must have the thing. I was in the grocery store last week and I had to cough, but I didn't want to cough because I was afraid that people would think I had the thing and they'd get like mad at me, so I had like this scratch in my throat and I'm just suppressing it and I'm just swallowing saliva, trying to get it to go away. And then finally I had to go into the bathroom and just have like this coughing fit to get the scratch out of my throat because I was so cognizant of what other people might think. I was afraid to cough in front of people, even into my arm or you know what I mean? It's
do you know in Japan now they're selling these fucking patches you can put on your fucking shirt to say, I have hay fever, I have asthma, I have like whatever. So people can see that when you're coughing and not assume you have the coronavirus.
I totally get it.
Yeah. Like
it was so stressful just having to cough, and those are things you've never thought about before in your life. Like you would just cough into your arm, and that would be that, or you would just take out something and blow your nose, and but now you think about like, what are people going to think if I cough? Especially since I'm in a grocery store picking through eggplants. Are they going to throw out all the produce if I cough right now? Am I going to be on the news for being some jerk that, people think are coughing all over the produce? It's like your mind just runs away with that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, for me, again, for someone who thinks they probably had it, it's like I waited. They tell you wait 5 days after you have the fever and then you're probably not contagious anymore and it's safe to go out. And I was like, I'm going to wait like fucking longer than that. So I waited like 8 days before I finally went out this past week. And I just made a quick run to this Japanese grocery store in Queens that I just wanted. I honestly just wanted Japanese beer. That was why I went. But, this is like this tiny, it's not like a supermarket. It's a very tiny grocery store. And they had a limit of like 10 people to get in. But it's like, I don't even know if we should have 10 people in here. Cause like, this is, it's like this, not that much bigger than like a 7-Eleven. So It's like, I don't even know if the 10 should be the limit, but I kept, I would just like try to walk around people and everybody, it was very awkward for everybody. And even this place was fucking cleaned out, which I couldn't believe because I'd heard like the Asian grocers weren't getting cleaned out like the way the other supermarkets were, because the some of the dumbest people are assuming that I guess they're going to get the coronavirus because they're shopping at an Asian grocer. But like no, this place was fucking cleaned out pretty bad too. I mean, I was lucky they still have my beer. But it's just very weird right now. I don't know. But yeah, I think we kind of lost the point. But I guess the point was to get back to the format of the show. I've been watching a lot of older wrestling. That's been a port in the storm for me. And I would much rather do a show during all this crap where we talk about older matches. And I came up with a format to do that with different guests, instead of talking about these fucking empty arena shows that I find pretty unwatchable anyway. So that's what we're going to do here on Wrestling Omakase for the next, however long this lasts. I assume for sure the rest of April, into May, whatever, until we're running shows probably in front of crowds again, or at least, until I get sick of this format too, or whatever the fuck. This is the format we're doing, which is 5 matches with whoever the guest is. And, we each pick 2 matches that we wanted to show each other. We're going to introduce the matches and talk about, why we picked those matches and, what those matches mean to us and that kind of thing. And then to get to I don't know, I just thought the number 5 sounded better than like the number 4 or number 6 or whatever. So to pick a 5th match, basically, and this is a little complicated to explain, but it makes more sense than you can explain it. So we each picked 2 matches we knew we're going to watch. And then I asked you to pick a 3rd match, and I also picked a 3rd match. And I took those 2 matches and put them on a poll. So the Omakase listeners, the Twitter followers, got to pick the match, and that became the 5th match. So we'll get into which one won at the very end. But Joe, let's start with your first pick, which was, go ahead. I mean, you can introduce it. Go ahead.
So this is the first match that I picked for you, correct?
Yes.
All right, so this was from January 11th, 1985, from the Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas, where the Fantastics, Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers, defended the NWA American Tag Team titles against the Midnight Express. This is 1985, so it's Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey as the Midnight Express combination. I know there's been like 6 different combinations if you really want to get pedantic throughout history. And the reason I picked this match is they had a match a couple weeks earlier on Christmas at the world-class Star Wars show, the big Christmas Star Wars show, and the Fantastics successfully defended the tag titles against the Midnight Express on that show. And that's a fairly famous match between the two, and it's a match that I saw, years ago, and I thought it was a really good match. But this match from the Sportatorium, which aired on World Class TV, I had never seen until they uploaded it on the network. And I immediately checked it out because I'm a huge fan of the Fantastics. I think, unlike a lot of people, I think they are the best tag team of the era. Not the Midnight Express, not the Rock and Roll Express. I love both of those teams, but I think the Fantastics are the best tag team of that era, and I don't think that they get their due. So I immediately watched that when it got uploaded, and I ended up liking this match more than the more famous match that they had on the Star Wars show a couple weeks earlier on Christmas. The reason I picked it for you, well, there's a couple reasons. Number one, I'm trying to get you to appreciate some territory wrestling. It's not your favorite area. It's not your area of expertise. I understand why it may not necessarily appeal to you or other people, but I thought this was a prime example of great territory wrestling with the hot crowd, with 2 of the best tag teams of all time, great action and athleticism and great work, especially for the era. All of those things combined, I thought it was a match from that time in history that you would really appreciate. So that was number 1, and I guess we're going to find out if you did real soon. And the other thing was the red hot crowd. And that actually turned out to be an unintentional theme of a lot of the matches that we picked today. And it's weird because it's like there's a lot of hot crowds, but from different eras of wrestling in different periods of time. There's a match that you picked that was sort of caught in between the Attitude Era and the Ruthless Aggression Era. Is that fair to say? 2001 WWE which was, that's kind of like a hot Attitude Era style crowd. And then there's a hot indie crowd with another match we're going to watch. And this was a hot Territory Era crowd. And they're all really hot crowds, but in different ways. So I thought it'd be interesting to discuss the dichotomy between all of these hot crowds that are hot in their own way. So those are some of the reasons I picked it. I don't know how much Fantastics you've seen. I love sharing the Fantastics with people because I think plenty of people know all about the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnights, but the Fantastics always seem to be like the redheaded stepchild of those three teams, the one that nobody talks about. And I really think Tommy Rogers is one of the most underappreciated wrestlers of all time. Everyone knows how great Ricky Morton was, especially in when it came to selling a beating before the hot tag. Everyone knows how great the Midnight Express were as a heel tag team and those sorts of things. But Tommy Rogers is a guy who I think is an underappreciated wrestler who's one of the greatest tag team workers ever and really one of the best workers, period, of that era. So for all of those reasons, I chose the Midnight Express, winning the tag team titles, the America's tag team titles from the Fantastics in the Sportatorium on November 1st, 1985. But I think the air date for the episode was like November. I'm sorry, I said November. I meant January.
Yeah.
It's January.
It was 26.
There you go. So if you're looking for it on the network, it's the January 26th episode of World Class. And actually, that episode, you might as well watch the whole thing. It opens up with a Shawn Michaels squash match when he's basically a young boy and he gets squashed by one-man gang. So that's kind of interesting to watch too. But
so I want to ask you two questions. First of all, did you think when you picked this for me, did you think I saw it already?
No.
So you were right. I've seen almost no World Class. So basically, I have not seen a lot of 80s US wrestling at all. Like I would say like I watched NWA/WCW from like 89, which is like the famous Flair Steamboat year, I believe, right?
Yes.
That would be the first stuff I really watched was all that, Flair Steamboat and Flair Funk. I've seen all of that. I've seen very little pre-89, NWA, WCW. I've seen pretty much none of the territory stuff. I've seen like a little WWF, I guess, but like, I've seen WrestleMania. It's like it's not like I've watched even like the TV or anything. So yeah, 80s US wrestling in general is definitely a big blind spot. I've watched way more, which I guess is not going to be a shock to any listeners here. I've watched way more 80s Japanese wrestling than I've watched 80s US wrestling. I've seen a lot of like 80s New Japan on, what's on New Japan World and some other stuff. And then I've watched a lot of the 80s All Japan. But I've never really dug deep into 80s territorial wrestling. So you were right about that. I'll go with my other question now. Actually, did you know the titles were held up?
The titles were held up. I know.
It's what the history I'm looking at says. Title held up because of Cornette's interference.
You mean
that was March? Okay.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because the Fantastics, they defended against the Midnights on Christmas and they beat them.
Yeah.
And then they had a couple house show matches after that, and then they did this match in the Sportatorium at the TV taping, and this is where the Midnights won the titles. So yeah, I was a little confused there, but it looks like you're just reading a little further down the line, an angle they did later. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were held up eventually. But yeah, let's see.
Let me ask you this: have you ever seen? See, I take it for granted that you've seen vintage Midnight Express before. Have you ever seen the Midnight Express before this?
I have. I mean, I guess I've probably seen them like past their peak, probably, right? Because I saw they're definitely in, 89.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And then like I've seen some like 90s American wrestling. I've seen a ton of, and including, I don't know if it wouldn't be the Midnight Express. Like I've seen a lot of Smoky Mountain. But I guess that wouldn't have been the Midnight Express. It would have been like the Heavenly Bodies.
Correct.
So, yeah. So I feel like I've seen like tag team matches that that people talk about, but again, pre-89 US wrestling. I mean, I might have watched a couple matches here or there, but like it is definitely a blind spot for me. So
you've probably seen the Stan Lane version of the tag team.
For sure.
So this is the Dennis Condrey version of tag team. Now, have you ever seen the Fantastics before?
I mean, weren't they in WCW eventually or no?
Yeah, they were in and out. They popped in and out. Yeah. But
again,
so
I feel like I had
past their prime.
Yeah.
Just like you're saying with the Midnights. So,
Yeah.
and this was your first time watching anything from World Class?
I believe. Well, I probably watched a couple like famous Fun Erics versus Freebirds matches. So this probably would be the only thing other than that.
So what did you think of the Sportatorium and the atmosphere and the crowd? Because that's considered maybe the rowdiest building and the hottest crowd in the history of wrestling, really, or at least American wrestling for sure.
It looked small. It looked smaller on TV than I was expecting. I don't know how many people were there. Do you know?
I think it didn't hold that many. I mean, I think it's very similar to, I think, like the ECW arena, and that's a very small space where they packed in as many people as possible.
I did not. Yeah, see, I would have, like, if you asked me without watching anything, like, John, how many people are in the Sportatorium, I would have guessed like 6,000 or something, probably, and it's definitely looked like way less than that.
Oh, and it's not even close to 6,000, but that just speaks to how crazy the crowds were. I guess Wikipedia is telling me the capacity was 4,500, so I guess it's a little closer to that than to the 6,000 and the 2,000. So somewhere in between what the ECW arena would hold a capacity, which is, they'd squeeze like 2,000 when the fire marshal wasn't around, and the 6,000 that you guessed. But it wasn't like a gigantic building. Like, it wasn't any kind of basketball arena or anything like that.
It almost looked like studio wrestling to a degree.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I could see that.
The crowd was very obvious. I mean, obviously the first thing you notice is the girlies love the Fantastics. They were like just screaming their heads off. Were there boos too for the Fantastics? Like, were there men booing? I feel like there were a few times.
The Sportatorium crowds were really hardcore heel babyface crowds. So if they were booing the Fantastics, I didn't pick up on that, and I'd be surprised. Now,
I felt like I heard it a couple times when the girls were cheering. I felt like there were a little bit of boos, and I felt like, I'm like, wow, is this like the earliest example of like what you'd see with Cena, where like the girls are very cheering loudly, and there's some dudes booing.
Here's the thing, though. In those days, the Midnight Express were favorites of like the smarks of the day.
Yeah.
Whatever small newsletter culture there was at that time, with the Observer being in its early days, there obviously was no internet culture yet. But if you were an early tape trader or an early, what we call today, a smark or whatever, those type of fans were huge fans of the Midnight Express. So is it possible that there were some hardcore smarks of the day in the building who were rooting for their favorites? Or, like you're saying, just rooting against the Fantastics because they were pretty boys? That's entirely possible. But the Sportatorium really, like Dallas, World Class wasn't usually that kind of territory. You would get that sort of thing in the Carolinas. In the Carolinas, people would root for the Horsemen. They'd root for Ric Flair. Philadelphia was always like that, where there would be a certain segment of the fan base that would root for the heels. Texas generally wasn't like that. But I guess it's not impossible considering who the opponents were.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was like really. I don't know. I could even be wrong. I felt like there was like 2 times where I noticed it, and it was both when the Fantastics were like really kicking ass and clearing the ring, and I felt like I could hear like maybe some faint booing behind all the girl cheering.
Smattering of boos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed is the footage looked pretty damn good for a match that took place over 15 months before I was born. So. That was the foot. I don't know. I guess that's WWE's probably cleaning it up and whatever. But yeah, it looked pretty good.
There's some of that, and also World Class in real time was way ahead of everyone in terms of production.
Yeah.
So they were known for their great production. They were known for being one of the first territories to fully embrace entrance music. And they also introduced a lot of camera angles that have now become the norm. They were one of the first territories where the cameramen would get in the ring at certain points to film the matches. So you'd get real up close, tight shots that nobody else was doing at the time. And then obviously everybody else copied it. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense because World Class was way ahead of the game when it came to production.
Yeah. Now, here's the part where I'm probably going to disappoint you. I came away way more impressed with the Midnights and the Fantastics. I mean, the Fantastic. I've never been, I guess, a big fan of American like clean cut baby faces anyway. So maybe it just isn't they were never going to connect with me on that level. But like, they were clearly, I could tell they were good workers, but like the people I was drawn to watching were definitely the Midnights, and their heat segment was so much fun in this match, and they were just like kicking so much ass. And to me, the weakest parts of the match were the early portion where I kept waiting for it to fall into the Southern tag format, and like, it just felt like the Fantastic Cleaning House went on forever at the start of the match. It really wasn't that interesting. But once the Midnights took control, like that was a really fun part of the match. And I'm sure part of it was the Fantastic selling. I'm sure they were, they did seem like they were very good at that. But when they really kicked Fulton's ass, I mean, that was just the most entertaining part of the match to me. And I really enjoyed the long extended Midnight Express heat segment. And the crowd really exploded for the hot tag, pretty much as you'd expect. There was a ref bump here in 1985. If anyone thinks that is a recent invention, I guess it is not. And then obviously Cornette hit Tommy with the tennis racket, and the Midnights won. But yeah, I don't know. It was really fun, especially the Midnight Heat segment. But the Fantastics running wild and their comeback really wasn't that interesting or entertaining to me. So I would only go, if I was going to star rate this, I would say like 3 3/4. I definitely enjoyed myself, but it wasn't like some all-time great match to me.
Yeah. Being drawn to the Midnight Express isn't exactly like some kind of outlier opinion.
Not a hot take, I guess.
No, they're awesome. I mean, it's like I prefer the Fantastics to the Midnights, but it's not like I don't think the Midnights aren't great. I mean, especially the Condrey version is a little different than the Stan Lane version. I mean, it's the same.
They're more like ass kickers because he's such a big dude. Yeah, they come off like ass kickers to me.
It's the grittier version of the team, for sure. Because Condrey is like a bar brawler, and he's very good at what he does. I mean, he looks the part. He looks like a dirty bar brawler. Believe it or not, he was probably like 28 years old in that match, and he looks like he's about 45. But if you look that up, I bet you he's like in his late 20s. But he looks the part, and it's the grittier version of the team because when Stan Lane replaces him, Stan Lane's whole character was basically like a pretty boy. So the dynamic of the team changed a little bit. There's people who prefer the Condrey version. There's people who prefer the Stan Lane version. There's nobody who prefers the Bart Gunn, Bob Holly version. But
I remember that. That was fucking awful.
Yeah,
and that was offensive to me as a 12-year-old. And I knew like the Midnight Express they're famous. What the fuck are they doing with this Bart Gunn hardcore Bob Holly team? Man.
Well, imagine Cornette trying to get it over. I mean, this was a guy who
they weren't like a bad team or anything, like when you watch those matches, but like obviously they were not up to the Midnight Express standard.
No, I mean, once you slap that name on them, maybe if they had a different name, it could have worked. Even Cornette was smart enough in Smoky Mountain, to rechristen that lineage of teams, the Heavenly Bodies, as opposed to sticking with the Midnight Express name when it just, when you're talking about Dr. Tom Pritchard and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's not a strange opinion to prefer the Midnights. Believe me, I'm the one that has the strange opinion preferring the Fantastics. But in this match too, I think it's a good example of Tommy Rogers because there were 2 heat segments in this match, right? So you got to see Tommy Rogers sell, and you got to see Tommy Rogers make a hot tag. Fulton too, for that matter. So, the baby faces come out hot. They do the long heat segment, hot tag. They do a second long heat segment and a hot tag. And then they go to the finish with the typical 80s heel finish with the tennis racket. So you got a little bit of a taste of everything in this match. But the Midnights were awesome here. And and you could see, like you said, the women in the Sportatorium, if you think it was a great reaction for the Fantastics, you should go watch some Von Erich matches. I mean, it's just, you think, it's that high-pitched screech that you just don't hear in wrestling crowds anymore. Like fans.
Yeah, no one wants to fuck anybody like these girls want to fuck the Fantastics. I mean,
Yeah,
which I get it. I mean, you know what you probably find it the closest in modern wrestling is in New Japan.
Yes.
I mean, those women want to, have relations with like Kota Ibushi and
when they randomly scream, they randomly scream out it. They'll go Kenny.
I mean, if you're in those crowds, it's even more obvious. Like it's like, wow, these women love these men, and it's like once you see it up close and personal, it's just like, they you'll never see people smile as long as they do when their faves are in the ring. But yeah, I mean that probably is the closest to this culture. Like like the closest. It's sure not in modern WWE. So
I think the key is to get young adult women and teenage girls into wrestling. Because you look at that era of Texas and, half that crowd is teenage girls or girls between the ages of 13 and 25, just screaming for the Von Erichs and the Fantastics or whoever. You look at like the early when Joshi was hot in the late 80s, early 90s, and it was teen girls, treating these women like idols. And those crowds were red hot and sort of that's what brings the fire. These promoters got to figure out a way to get young women into these crowds again, because it just
Toriumon, Dragon Gate, obviously even Noah in the mid-aughts. I mean, if you watch those Kenta Marufuji matches, there were girls there who looked, very into them. So I mean, that I do think it's a big key. And like Japanese wrestling has been so much better at it in the last 20 years. And it's just, I don't know if teenage girls just don't give a fuck anymore in America about wrestling, and I don't know. I don't really blame them, I guess. I mean, it's been so bad. But yeah, Vince has lost track of what's what people find attractive, it feels like. I mean, Vince fucking thinks the girls are gonna love Baron Corbin.
Yeah.
And he looks like And I remember I asked Nicole, like, do you find this man attractive, and put him on the screen? And she's like, no, like, what are you talking? I'm like, Vince thinks this is what all the ladies want now.
Yeah, especially younger girls. Like I could totally see maybe like a 40-year-old woman being into Baron Corbin. Like maybe he's got a look that appeals to like a soccer mom or something. But like no teen girl is going to be swooning over Baron Corbin. It's utterly ridiculous. So you came away impressed with the Sportatorium and the atmosphere of the building. That much can be said, correct?
Yeah, and the Midnights for sure.
And you thought it was a good little match. Now, to be clear, this is not considered any kind of all-time great match. Okay. This was a match which, like I said, I never even saw until a couple of years ago when they uploaded it on the network, and it was like a nice little hidden gem to me because it was something I had never seen before. And I came away with it. I think, I hate star rating matches that are out of the current time period. It's hard for me because they're not really working for my 2020 eyes. They're working for fans in 1985, and I find that very tricky. But if this was a match that happened today, I'd be right around where you are. I think I might go 4 flat, 3 3/4, somewhere in that neighborhood for it, to give you an idea. So this is not like a match that I would like throw 5 stars on. This is not the best possible example of either team, but I did think it was a good example of the style of the work of particularly the tag work of that era, and something that I could expose to you that you haven't really been exposed to, now I learned really at all. So from that perspective, that's why I picked it. And I'm glad. I thought you would like it. I thought you would like it, but I didn't think you would love it. So I guess it landed right where I thought it would with you.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's go into my first pick, which was Meiko Satomura versus Sarii from Sendai Girls, April 16, 2019. Now, for why I picked this match, it's not going to make sense unless if you're a member of the Voice of Wrestling Slack listening to this podcast, it will make complete sense to you, because multiple people have been trying to get you to watch this match for like a fucking year, pretty much since it happened. So once I came up with this format and got you as the first guest, I was like, well, obviously I'm picking Meiko versus Sarii to finally get you to watch what I thought was the 2019 match of the year. Now, having picked this, I also did not expect you to like it on that level, so it'll be interesting to see if you do. But yeah, this is my favorite match from last year. It's everything that I love about professional wrestling. As far as like, two women who are in there, like, it doesn't really, the gender doesn't even really matter. 2 wrestlers in there who, they don't have any real fucking issue, but they're just trying to prove they're the better person. They're beating the shit out of each other with kicks. They're suplexing the shit out of each other. other than like lariats, this has all of the wrestling action that I mark out for. There's like there's some cool little mat wrestling, which I love. So it's pretty much all of my favorite stuff in one match. And they just, it's worked at such a brisk pace. It's a 15-minute, pretty much a sprint, even with the brief like test of strength mat wrestling interludes. And yeah, it's just exactly like it clicks every box for me. I thought the selling was really great. I thought the all the execution of everything was just so perfect. These backdrops look so sick, and these that fucking, I don't even know the name of the suplex that Sareee does, but I love that. It's almost like a Sambo suplex, but she drops them right in their head. So I totally admit it for being a mark for head drops, and they do all these head drops in this match. And yeah, it's just to me it's pretty much the perfect wrestling match where there's no flaws in it to me. Like there's nothing even close to a botched spot or anything. And just from start to finish, it's just exactly what I want out of a professional wrestling match. And, I thought by the time Sareee beats her, it just feels like, she survived this veteran as much as anything. And it's, just exactly the kind of match I mark out for. So I have no idea what you thought of this. You wouldn't tell anybody again in the Slack, which is great. You saved it for this. Maybe they'll probably all listen now to see what you finally thought of this match. So, Mr. Joe Lanza, what do you think of Mako and Sareee?
So I think it's funny that everybody wanted me to watch this match, and the reason I didn't watch it is because there was just no easy way to watch it for whatever reason at the time. The video kept getting taken down off of YouTube and Dailymotion or whatever with copyright claims, and I just threw my hands and gave up. I wasn't going to keep searching for this match that I wasn't even really super invested into seeing. It's just everybody else wanted me to see it. Then I finally get a copy of the thing now, and I find out that a certain member of the Slack had the match as an unlisted video on Dailymotion the entire time and could have just sent me the damn link a year ago. Can you believe that?
Kevin.
Yeah, I didn't want to call him out, but but it's like
he's not going to listen anyway. He's listening to the podcast, so
that's true.
You can say anything you want about Kevin Wilson. He'll never fucking hear this.
So with that, it's like he had it the whole time. He saw everybody breaking my balls over watching this match. And he never sent me the link. We could have gotten this over with a year ago.
I think it was Gerard. It was Gerard, right? That finally just was like, "Oh, here," because I sent you the RooTube link because that was the only place it was up publicly listed, and that's what I had to list on Twitter because I don't know if Kevin Wilson wants me sharing his link to all my Twitter followers, so I gave the RooTube link in the description. So basically, I think if you're listening to this and you're wondering how to watch this match, I have the RooTube link in the description. And on my Twitter, that's a pain in the ass now. You have to go through a fucking whole weird Russian authentication process. So
you gotta give Vladimir Putin your phone number and everything. I'm not even exaggerating. They ask for your phone number and your address, and it's like I'm not doing all this to watch a Miko Satomura match. I'm sorry. So I found another way, and it turns out Kevin had a damn link the whole time.
Yeah, so the Kevin link, if you go to the Joshi City website, I think it's on the website somewhere. I think you can find it, but yeah, I don't know. It's Kevin had the whole time. What are you doing, Kevin?
Yeah. What a jerk. So so I fire this up, and I got to tell you, I thought it was pretty fucking terrible.
Okay. Wow.
No, it wasn't terrible. It was a very good match. That's what everybody wants to hear. That's what everybody thinks I'm going to say, and they want me to say. But no, what struck me about the match was it really felt like a huge win for Sareee because she had to overcome this fucking monster, and Miko, as usual, was just an absolute beast. Like you said, the work was all on point, flawless work, a nice little story here. Good snug work. It really felt like Miko was putting a beat into her. So when Sareee finally wins the match, it feels like a huge accomplishment to overcome this legend and this monster who just beat the living shit out of her. And it doesn't come off like a fluke, and it doesn't come off like she didn't earn it. It came off like she earned a huge win over a gigantic roadblock. And then the way Sareee sold it at like just the relief when the match was finally over and the excitement. And then the way Miko sold it as well after the match. Like she couldn't believe that she blew this and lost to this person and was bested by Sareee. That's what jumped out at me, and that's what most of my notes are about. Just how they worked such a great match that told the story, the exact story they were trying to tell, that this was a huge win for Sari versus an almost impossible opponent.
And then it set up the whole year for her, too, because she will go on to win the San Diego's world title and all that. So.
Now, see, and that's the thing. Like, I don't watch Joshi at all, and I don't know anything about what led to the match or what came after, but they still got the story across to me. It still feels like, they kind of nailed that because I have a pretty accurate interpretation of what they were trying to tell us with this. And I can totally see how this match would be a springboard to this wrestler getting to the next level and winning a championship and becoming a big star and all those sorts of things. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah. But I think you did see some of the stuff for Sari later in the year, right? Like you saw the Chihiro match or something. I remember.
Is that the the Husky girl?
Yeah, the Husky girl. Yeah. That's
Chihiro?
Yeah.
Then I saw that match, yeah.
Yeah. Did you like this one better? Because that's a big debate.
This was a better match, yeah. Okay. The Miko match was better.
Well, I agree. Because I mean the Chihiro match I liked a lot, but this to me was like the Joshi match from last year, along with Arisa Nakajima and then Takahashi, which I don't know if you saw that or not, but
no. The match with what's the other girl's name again? Chihiro.
Yeah.
The match with Chihiro was more of a traditional modern style Pearl match with the hot near falls at the end and the German suplexes and whatnot. The Miko match felt grittier. It felt more like a fight.
Yeah.
And I thought it told a better and more clear story. They were both good matches. The Chihiro match, I think I went like 3.5 or something in real time. I can't remember. And you all got mad at me. And then this one.
Taylor and Aaron Bentley are the two that are like.
Do they even understand that 3.5 is a really good rating for a match? They're
like materially
burial.
I remember Aaron in the Slack was like, John is the only New Japan fan who also has good Joshi opinions.
Yeah, like I don't understand. Like I remember I watched that match because it was that one had everyone wanted me to watch both of these matches. I could only find the other one, so I watched it. Yeah. You're all waiting around with bated breath for my rating, like, and I'm like, I don't know, it was a pretty good match. I'd go like 3.5, and then I get buried by everybody, and I'm like, hold on a second. That means I mean,
this is all the Slack does basically is bury each other's wrestling takes. So I mean,
Yeah, I'm like, this 3.5 means it was good. I don't understand why I'm getting buried right now. You know who never gets buried, who always gets out of being buried somehow? Rich. Who? Yeah, because Rich won't watch it. Like he just won't watch it. And subject
I'm saying
himself.
in general, he somehow his takes never get buried. I don't know what it is. Don't you agree?
Point. I mean, yeah, to some extent, yeah. I mean, that's a good point. Why is he immune to the burials?
You obviously you're a heat magnet. I can be a heat magnet in there too, especially if AEW comes up. And there's some other people, but yeah, Rich just floats on by. Never against.
I think he's real careful with what he gives a take on.
Yeah,
because he doesn't want to take the heat. See, because here's the thing about Rich that people might not realize: he's a sensitive boy. He doesn't show it, but he takes things to heart. And I think he's smart enough. I think he knows that. And I think he's smart enough to stay out of the deep end of the take pool because he doesn't want to get beat up over his takes. But I do think it's time that we start abusing him. He needs to take the same abuse that everybody else takes. Why does he get off the hook? You know?
It's true.
But
anyways, we gotta get a star rating here from you, Joe.
I have to tell you what I wrote down. I gotta be like, I went 3 3/4, but I'm afraid to put that out there because if I got buried for the 3.5 for the other one, everyone's going to crush me for this one. Even though I put the match over and just said I thought it was a very good match, I almost was untrue to myself and just gave it the damn extra quarter star just to get everybody off my back because I figure if I just say 4, everyone can go, oh, all right, well, he put it in the notebook. But I got to be honest, what I have written down is 3 3/4. So if I'm some kind of monster and that's too low, then that's fine. But yeah, it was a very good match. I don't see it at like a match of the year level. Like, I mean,
it was my match of the year. I gave it the full 5 too.
I mean, I definitely don't see it at that level. I don't think it was like the perfect pro wrestling match. It didn't. But here's the other thing too, and this just doesn't get discussed nearly enough when it comes to match ratings and breaking down matches and stuff like that. People never give enough credence to your personal investment in the wrestlers, the promotions, and the stories. I'm coming into this match ice cold. I know nothing of the story. I've seen plenty of Miko Satomura in my life. As far as Sari with the 1,000 E's on the name, I've seen one other match. I've seen the Chihiro match. That's it. So I don't know anything about the story, the wrestlers. I have no investment in Sendai Girls. That's what this was, right? So it's like
Sendai Girls, yeah.
The more invested you are in a promotion, the more invested you are in the wrestlers that are involved in a match, the more invested you are in the story. Obviously, that's going to influence sort of your ceiling on a match, unless it's just something that's just so fucking good that it's undeniably one of the greatest things that's ever happened. You're invested.
Which I don't think that even exists anymore. It's like, I think everybody has their bubbles, and you're always gonna to me, here's a great example. Okada Naito, that was one of the best things I ever saw, but maybe the best thing I've ever seen as a wrestling fan, maybe my favorite thing ever. But like, if someone just parachuted in and didn't spend the last fucking, I don't know, 7 years of their life watching this man Naito go up and down and all around with Okada and everything, like if they didn't, really 8 years, like the 2012 match in the Korakuen was the first big one. Like if they didn't live through all that, I totally get why, you might parachute and be like, yeah, that was fun, but 3 3/4. Like it makes total sense to me why you might say that. Whereas, if you lived and died with it all that time, I mean, that was the easiest 5-star rating I ever gave. So,
yeah, I mean, it is a perfect example. And actually, see, this is the thing. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, pro wrestling is a storytelling medium. So, if they're telling a story that I'm not privy to or I'm not invested in, then it's going to stand the reason that I might not like something as much as you do if you're totally invested in these characters and these stories and the back history and everything else. So, it's like, I thought this was I'd call this a very good match for someone just parachuting in and parachuting right out. Parachuting out doesn't make sense, but for someone just parachuting in and then jogging out, I thought it was a very good match.
All right, so let's get to your second pick, and I want to go ahead and tee it up here.
Okay, so do you have the date on this? I didn't write the date down. I
do have the date. So it was Kota Ibushi versus El Generico versus Nick Jackson versus Jigsaw from Chikara, the ECW Arena, March 28th, 2009, during King of Trios that year, but it was not a King of Trios match. So basically, for people who don't know anything about Chikara, the losers of King of Trios, like the early round losers, they put them in these 2 4-ways. They would call Rey, I can't speak Spanish, Rey de Voladores, I guess. And it would be basically like a high flyer theme, like similar to Rey de Reyes they have in AAA, which I'm sure I'm also mispronouncing. But the 2 winners of the 4-way would then meet on the last night, and they basically have it basically be a second tournament during the other tournament. Is the easiest way to explain it, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this, and if I'm not mistaken, this might have been the 4 losers. I'm not even sure this was the 4 winners. I might be wrong about that, though.
What do you mean?
In other words, I think this match was. I don't remember if this was the actual finals of that tournament or if this
no. So this is one of the 2 semifinals.
Oh, this is one of the semifinals. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's basically the whole tournament was just these 2 4-ways, and then the winners would meet on the final night, and that would be the champion.
That's where I was confused. This is an 11-year-old match. So I knew it wasn't like the final, but I couldn't remember. Yeah, okay, so it was a semifinal. So that makes sense. Yeah. The reason I picked it was at the time, this match was considered the most bananas thing that a lot of people had ever seen. And I know I loved it at the time. And I know that.
I'll be honest, I was not expecting you to pick a Chikara match. That was something.
This is when I was into Chikara. This is before Chikara started doing spaceships and time travel and fucking all the other assorted bullshit that they do now. But I went to this trios. I was at this trios. But
oh, wow.
I remember at the time, this match was considered just it's not that there hadn't been crazy 4-way spot fest before this. There absolutely were. But for whatever reason, this one kind of resonated with people and became sort of the peak 4-way spot fest flippy do match of the era, and one that I wanted to see in hindsight would hold up to being a decade old, and because I haven't seen it in a few years. And I also wanted to see what you thought about it, because you said you hadn't remembered ever watching it. So I was like, okay, this is good. So
I will say, in the interest of full disclosure, when you said the names, I was like, I don't know if I've seen this. When I watched it, I was like, oh, I definitely watched this.
Oh, so you have seen it?
Yeah. I mean, when did you go to Chikara shows in 2010? By the way, I wonder if you're in the same. That was another time we were in the same building.
No, because I moved
okay.
in 2009, so that was.
So this is like under a year from when I started going to like pretty much every Chikara show in the area. Like, so basically March 2009. I guess I'm like in between promotions is the best way to put it. Like, I probably just stopped going to Ring of Honor. My famous run where I went to pretty much every Ring of Honor East Coast show from like 2003 through like 2008. And you could see me in the front row of a lot of shows and stuff. And
which, without question, we were in those crowds together. There's no question about that. Yeah.
But you were like a GA guy, so
I was back against the wall, man. Yeah, you know where.
Yeah, I was front row of pretty much every. Like, people will go back and watch it and know what I look like, or like, yeah, there you are. It's like, you know. But yeah,
what's the famous spot that ended up in your lap?
So when Kenta Kobashi Irish flipped Samoa Joe during Kobashi Joe at the New Yorker, and Joe like flips over the barricade and he just kicks me right in the fucking head. It was great. I should have held out for merch or something, because like somebody immediately came over and was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." I mean, it wasn't like he kicked me that hard.
Yeah,
but yeah, he kicked me right in the fucking head. I should have been like, "No, it is terrible. Give me some fucking DVDs."
Absolutely.
But no, I didn't think that. I was too busy like watching the greatest match I'd ever seen in my life at that point.
Yeah.
So like, it didn't even occur to me to hold out for merch or anything. But yeah, were you at Kobashi Joe too, or no?
This is painful.
You were not there.
I didn't go.
Did you go to the Philly one?
It's the biggest regret of my wrestling life not going to.
I think I've heard you talk about this. Before.
I could have went. There was no reason not to go. I didn't want to get on a train and go. I just didn't go. And
did you go to the Philly?
I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I saw when Misawa came in. I went to Philly and New York for Misawa.
Well, did you see Kobashi?
No, I've never seen Kobashi.
Wow.
I didn't. I blew off Kobashi, and now obviously there's never going to be another opportunity to see Kobashi.
I mean, I will. If I ever feel anything towards Ring of Honor still, it's probably because they gave me. I mean, I got to see Kenta Kobashi and Mitsuharu Misawa, and I'm never gonna forget that. It's like that. That's always gonna be.
Yeah, you've heard my Misawa. You've heard my Misawa story, right? Where I'm back against the wall, but during the match, everyone is standing for the entire duration of the match. I can't see anything. I'm like stretching my neck, and I'm standing next to Morishima, who's standing on a chair, because he wants to see over the sea of heads. And he gives me his chair, Morishima. And I was like, we had like an argument, even though we didn't speak the same. I'm like, no, you keep the chair. He's like, no, take the chair. I'm like, no, you keep the chair. Like, I felt bad about taking the guy's chair. But he's a wrestler and he understood. He saw this fan who couldn't enjoy the match, and he gave me his chair, and I stood on his chair. That's my little Morishima story during the Misawa match. And I think that was
Hammerstein.
It had to be, because he was in the match in Philly, right?
Yeah, because the Misawa, that was, I think, Misawa and Kenta, right? Is that right? I think, or they're on opposite sides. Let me say.
The tag match. It was and then the singles match was in whatever the other building was. So I can't remember which building was which. But
that I was in the balcony from the Misawa, and man, that was the Hammerstein, like I was front row Hammerstein balcony, and that it just watching everybody react to that. I mean, that was one of those moments that you'll never.
Yeah, we felt like, and you saw it with Kobashi. It was probably the same kind of feel, but we felt like we were watching a god. It was just.
So it was Kenta. Oh no, it was Misawa Kenta, the singles match. That's what it was. Mm-hmm. So the tag match was Misawa and Kenta against Marufuji and Morishima. Well, they went to a 30-minute draw in Philly, so that was the first night. And the second night was
people
Misawa.
booed the draw, by the way. People don't remember that historically, but people booed the draw. People were not happy with the draw. But it's like, I knew the draw was coming. Like you saw the draw coming a mile away that they weren't going to do a finish. But I didn't care. It didn't bother me. But people booed that draw. And then the singles match. And look, Misawa was washed up. I mean, this was very tail end of Misawa. But it didn't matter. No one gave a shit. I mean, it just completely irrelevant. But
I mean, you could see from the balcony that people cried when he came out. I mean, it's like one of the few times I can remember like people being in tears, and it's like, I mean, they felt like they were meeting a god, and it is just something. I mean, the only other time I saw that many people cry in a wrestling building was probably when Naito won the title, and when I was there for the Invasion Attack 2016, where like these women were just like fucking like bawling. I mean, like you could tell they were just, it was just a really emotional. I mean, even when he won the G1, which I was lucky enough to be there for too in 2017, that did not get that level of reaction. I mean, people were really happy and like just overjoyed, but like him winning the IWGP title finally in 2016, I mean, people just were like fucking beside themselves, like just fucking bawling. So those are like the two that I'll never forget as far as like people crying, was like just seeing Misawa and seeing Naito win the title. So,
and again, that's why you have to contextualize this shit when people rate matches, because there's wrestling matches that can move people to tears.
Well, that Naito Okada match wasn't even that good. I mean, that was the one where like Sonata ran in and like fucking there was a ref bump and Bushi and Evil. I mean, it was like I probably like a 3.5 or 3 3/4 star match, but that was not like an all-time great match. But seeing Naito win the title was just like, my God, like people, it didn't matter how good the match was, because people were just so invested in seeing, whether they were fans of his all the way back to the Stardust Genius stuff, or whether they had just gotten on the LIJ train. I mean, they were just so invested in this man winning this title. They, it didn't even, they probably could have had a fucking stinker and it would have, they still would have cried. So.
Yeah.
But to get all the way back to this Chikara match, I was like in between promotions in 2010, like when the BDK thing started. That's when my friends started bringing me to like every Chikara show. So the first one was like the season, because Chikara, people don't know, they did seasons. So the first one I went to was like the season premiere for 2010 in like January. So this would have been like, I guess, like 10 months before I started going to every Chikara show. But I did go back later and watch like DVDs and stuff. So like once I watched this match, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen it. But it's easily available on YouTube, by the way, which we're going to put the link in the description. So, anyone can watch this, whether they have a subscription or not. But yeah, I guess you kind of did explain why you picked it already before we got off on that tangent.
So it's like, the other thing about it was it's like the first time that a lot of those people are seeing Kota Ibushi. So it's like there's a couple spots in the match that they're reacting to that they've never seen before in their life, which I think is interesting. And the same thing with some of the other guys. I mean, there's stuff that Nick Jackson does here that he does in every fucking match now, but this was like fresh because it was, it's 11 years ago. So there were a lot of spots here that to me, the match held up. I still finished watching this and thought to myself, I just watched a pretty great match. But in real time, I could see why this was considered at even another level as something that was, a match of the year contender and just one of the best matches of the year. But what did you take away from it?
I mean, first of all, I guess before we get into the actual match, what do you consider peak Chikara? Because I think it's pretty much, I think, like, I'd say like, I don't know, 07 or 08 through like 2012, probably.
That's probably
like 2011. Fair. Yeah.
That's
but
fair,
like,
because I thought the 09 trios, now I haven't seen all of them, but of the trios that I've seen, which would probably be about a half a dozen of them, I thought 09 was the best trios.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to say. Like these King of Trios tournaments, like it's like the peak of the peak, basically, where like they would fly in everybody. I mean, the following year, the one I went to in 2010, I mean, that was the first time I saw Daisuke Sekimoto and Yuichiro Kobayashi, and like they would fly in all these fucking wrestlers from Japan. I have no idea how they afforded it in hindsight. I guess they didn't really, is the problem. But like, yeah, they were bringing all the Japan guys. They were bringing all the hot guys from the U.S. Indies. I mean, to me, this is almost like, obviously people love the Bolas, but I think the King of Trios were even better. And it's probably because first of all, I love I love 6-man matches anyway. And obviously most of these shows are 6-man matches, but like just the sheer number of like, I don't know, like Japanese indie guys they would bring in to go with like all these amazing, US indie wrestlers at the time, plus like their higher end wrestlers. I mean, that like to me is the peak, is these King of Trios from like, like 08 through like, I don't know. I mean, even when the promotion started going down otherwise, I feel like the King of Trios were still pretty good for a little while. I don't know when the last one I saw was or when the last one was good, but like, yeah, I mean, these tournaments were just incredible. So like that to me is like the peak of this era of Chikara. As far as like the match itself, the first thing I noticed, I don't know how you feel about this. Ultramantis Black might be my favorite English commentator of all time. He's just so, I don't know how he pulls it off with that fucking voice and everything that he's doing, but like he's somehow just an incredible commentator as far as like both making you excited for the match and you could tell he's a total fucking wrestling nerd and he always has all these like amazing anecdotes and like I don't know, he is just such an incredible commentator.
No, the commentary was very good. There's no question about it that it adds to it, as opposed to a lot of indie wrestling where the commentary detracts from the match, where it actively hurts the match. This helped the match.
Well, people who don't know, again, for Chikara, they would have these rotating. They basically have rotating commentators throughout the show, and some of the commentators would be great. I mean, another one I remember always really enjoying was Chuck Taylor. I mean, he was just awesome at commentary. He was just really funny. Basically, he wasn't like the best pure commentator probably, but like he was just really, really funny. He would come out with a lot of really funny stuff. And, Bryce who was Ultramantis' partner, he was good. Quackenbush was always really good at commentary, whatever you think of him as an owner or whatever. He would come up with like really interesting stuff. And then there would be wrestlers who were really terrible at it. Like Icarus, I remember, was always really bad at it. Like really, really bad at commentary when they had him do it. Eddie Kingston was okay. He's one of those guys that wasn't as good at it as you'd expect for someone who's such a good promo, but he would come up with some really interesting stuff. But yeah, I mean, that was one of the things of these shows where like, the commentators would rotate throughout, and Ultramantis was always my favorite. I mean, he was just so fucking good at this commentary. So I wanted to make a note of that immediately. The big flaw at this match, and the thing that, again, it's a nerdy complaint, but even the commentators complained about it. They break up each other's pins when it's an elimination match. And that just annoyed the piss out of me. And I've seen that before in other elimination matches. And it's like, why are you breaking up pins in a fucking elimination match?
Now, see, you stole my heat here, because this is why I was going to say that the commentary helped the match, because they didn't ignore that. And they didn't try to cover for it. They pointed it out. And you're thinking, watching the match, these guys are idiots, and the commentators are backing you up on that.
Yeah. I mean, they did kind of give like a I think Ultramantis at one point was like, pride or whatever. They want to ping Coda. But like, he didn't really even try to sell it that badly, because it's like, they knew that was fucking stupid. I mean, that's the big, problem with this match. But man, like once like Coda and Generico start going,
bingo. My
God. I mean, like Kota Ibushi, first of all, who looks skinny as fuck here. I mean, compared to 2020. Oh my God, he's so skinny. But look, Kota, if you've never seen Kota Ibushi, and obviously speaking to the listener here, I'm sure you have, but if you've never seen Kota's work, during this period, I mean, when he was doing amazing stuff in DDT, and really, I mean, putting that promotion on the map as far as like his stuff in DDT. But he was in Dragon Gate a lot around the time. He was in Noah. He was in El Dorado. I mean, he was all over the fucking place, and all of his stuff in that period is so fucking good. And like a year later, he'd be in New Japan a lot with the junior tag team with Kenny and everything. But like, yeah, all of this like mid-aught stuff for him. Like, if you've never seen it, like while we're all like stuck at home or whatever, go seek it out, because like, man, that period is incredible for Kota. Like the stuff he was doing, in these Differ Cups, I think that he was in, in Dragon Gate, like I said, even in El Dorado, like he was fucking amazing.
Ring of Honor too.
Ring of Honor, yeah, obviously. But yeah, so like he's he was just incredible here. And El Generico was fucking like he does this incredible like fucking dive to the floor and then that crazy swinging DDT through the post. And I don't know, it really hit me during this watching this. I mean, he's always been awesome, but it's like this man was like a fucking manager in WWE for like a year and a half. I mean, what the fuck? Like, how is that even possible?
He stole my heat again because one of my other takeaways watching this was it really hammers home how much he's being wasted in his current role. It's just
he was
crazy.
like incredible here.
This is a guy who indisputably was one of the 10 best wrestlers in the world at one point, right around this era. I don't know specifically this year or whatever, but and he had a history with the boot. This was a year before their matches in DDT, right? This was 2000. No, this was 2009. This was before.
Yeah, so Ibushi Generico, I think would that be? I mean, when Generico was champion 2012. Yeah.
So they didn't have history yet. This may have been the first time they were in a ring together, and look how good they were together. Yeah. I mean, when these two were in the ring together in this match, it was like it was fucking magical. It was so good. Yeah. And it's like you're just watching, and like this was Ibushi's kind of, he's touring the world, and people are seeing him for the first time in a lot of instances. You could feel it with this crowd, some of the things that he does that they've never seen before. There's the way they gasp. They don't just react, they gasp. Yeah. And that was kind of how people reacted to Ibushi all over the world when he went to all these various promotions that you're talking about.
But it really warmed me to how impressive Generico was. And like
so good.
You forget about it now because he's been like doing nothing for years. But like,
yeah, it's not like it was It's not like he was being optimally used before he was a manager. I mean, they've kind of, mismanaged him from the jump. But look, that's not what they do. They're not going to put him in there to have 25-minute classic singles matches. That unfortunately was never going to happen. But this is a guy I think you said it best. You almost forget how great he was during this period of his career.
Yeah. I mean, he was just, I remember the first time I saw him, you see this guy and he comes out with this, I think it was probably CZW or something. He comes out with this gimmick and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is stupid. And then he starts wrestling and you're like, wait a second, this guy is incredible. Yeah. It's like, who cares that his gimmick is dumb? But yeah, I mean, I just remember having that exact reaction of like, yeah, this gimmick is stupid. El Generico? Like, what the fuck does that mean? And he's clearly not Mexican. It's just kind of, it just didn't strike me as funny at all. But like, then he starts wrestling and you're like, who gives a shit? He's incredible.
Yeah. And he wasn't just like an offensive wrestler, like a spot guy. Like who sells better than peak El Generico? Yeah. I mean, and with a mask, without the aid of facial expressions. This guy was one of the best bump and sell guys around too. But yeah, Ibushi and Generico were without question the highlight of this match, and really was the meat of the match.
Yeah, Jigsaw didn't do a lot. Nick was good. Jigsaw really didn't do a ton, but Nick Jackson was really, I mean, if you had never seen Nick Jackson before, I'm sure you were blown away. I always say, like, when people bring it up, like, who's your least favorite wrestlers that intellectually are really, really good, it is probably the Young Bucks for me, like, as far as that goes. So, but but him in this match, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he like annoyed me a lot less than he does watching a lot of Young Bucks stuff nowadays. Maybe it just didn't. Maybe I don't know if it's because he's doing single stuff or I don't know. He looked really impressive here. Like I enjoyed him more in this match than I typically enjoy a Young Bucks match now. I guess the best way.
What did you think of his singles match, the Spot Fest with Phoenix that opened up Dynamite like a couple months ago?
Yeah, that was really good. So yeah, that probably was. I don't know. Maybe I just don't care. I think it's one of those things where I just seen too many Young Bucks matches or something.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't click with me anymore. Whereas like, Nick in a singles setting, I guess is still feels unique or whatever. But
right. So in terms of, do you think this is the kind of match that holds up? With everything we've seen since, with these crazy spot fests.
I'm going to give you a rating on all that. But okay. I want to say before that, because AEW, I just brought up AEW. If people are wondering where that AEW tag style of nobody ever leaving the ring without a tag comes from, you can see the fucking genesis of it here. Because even though this is a 4-way match, they're supposed to be tagging in and out, like they're supposed to be sitting on the apron tagging in and out, but like they just come in the ring and double team forever without any fucking tags, with the ref ever getting rid of any of the wrestlers. So you could just see like this is, here in like PWG, obviously, like they were already doing that style in 2009, so it shows you where that comes from. And obviously, if you didn't watch 2009 Chikara or PWG or whatever, you'd think it was like, I guess, a new thing since it hasn't been on national television. But yeah, I don't know. My reaction in general with AEW is almost like, maybe that's why it does impress me less, because I lived through this period of US indie wrestling, and to me it's almost just like it is what I was watching 11 years ago on national television. And to me, watching this match, that really hit home for me. Like, could be a reason why I'm not as impressed with AEW as some people. It just, this was stuff I was watching 11 years ago. And to me, like this, like if you put this match on TNT, I don't think it would be out of place at all. It might be one of the better matches they've had on Dynamite, honestly. But like, I don't think it would be. I think it would be very much in line with what they put on Dynamite every week. So I think it just to me, like it drove that home that like, what everybody goes gaga for in AEW, I totally get it, because like living through this, it did blow me away. So like, 11 years later, I'm sure it blows people away the first time they see it on national television. So
it's weird. So you're kind of saying it holds up, but it doesn't hold up all at the same time, because
it holds up. It holds up, but
you're just tired of it.
Yeah, I just don't have any. I mean, I honestly do think this is better than a lot of what I saw on Dynamite when as far as like watching on Dynamite. But like, yeah, it's just something that like I've seen so many of these spot fests by now that like it's never been my favorite style of match, and it doesn't hold up to me the same way that watching like a really great like Mako Sari, which we watched earlier, like that just is more my style of match than this, I guess. But
so why do you think this?
And I also lived through so much Dragon Gate that like
that's true too. Dragon Gate is just,
you can only see the same spot. I watched 15 years of it. It's just like at some point,
So what do you think it is about this one that still has people talking about it now? If there's been 11 years worth of these exact kind of matches, do you think it's just that the work is so much better in this one, particularly
I think
with
the work
Jericho and Ibushi?
Yeah, the work is really, really good. I mean, Kota, you have two. I mean, I honestly don't think it's an exaggeration to call Kota and Generico like two of the best ever. And they're like at the peak of their powers here, and they're fucking going crazy. So I totally get it. And I think that exchange really does stand out. And, I'm sure that is a huge part of it. The atmosphere is really good too. And you kind of alluded to that earlier. I wanted to ask you actually, because you were in the building, at this point, the ECW arena, it holds probably like 1,100 people or 1,000 people or whatever, maybe less, like 900. I never experienced the ECW arena during ECW. So I've heard people say it was like a completely different building by here. I mean, that's basically true, right?
Oh, it's true. It's This was after one of the renovations. There's been more since. I haven't been to the latest version of the, I guess it's called the 2600 arena now.
Oh yeah, now it looks. I just went for New Japan last year when they were there. Yeah. Now it looks completely, like, compared to even here, it looks completely fucking different.
Just a professional building now, just a professional venue basically now, and but this was completely different than it was, I guess. Okay, so this was 2009, and I guess the last time I was there for ECW would have been 1996 or 1997. So what are we dealing with here? Like 12 or 13 years.
Wow. So why didn't you go 98 through 2000? Just lost interest?
I didn't lose interest in the promotion, but just life changes. I wasn't going to shows anymore.
Because that was like the only ECW shows I ever attended as a kid. I had a cousin that was really into it. He dragged me to that, like, was like 99, 2000 in Queens. So what was happening? So you never went to Philly. You went to Queens. I think I went to the Elks Lodge, like, I think twice.
See, I wish I would have went to the Elks Lodge at least once, because those were also super hot building super hot shows with a super hot building. And what Heyman would do is he would play the New York fans against the Philly fans, so they would try to outdo each other. That was very smart.
Yeah.
So
I
I never
did you ever go to Hammerstein? I went there once.
for ECW. No,
Yeah.
but for Ring of Honor a million times, and everything else. But but the arena was a lot different. 12 years later, they cleaned it up and it was remodeled, and the Crow's Nest is like a stage. There was a stage over there as opposed to like the Crow's Nest. It was all, it was very different.
Yeah.
But the crowds, you had the territory crowd in that Fantastics Midnight's match, which was red hot, and you had a red hot, like modern indie crowd for this match, and hot crowds, just hot in different ways.
The holy poop chant was like always entertaining. Where like I can't imagine anyone ever thought they'd hear a holy poop chant each of the arena. But I don't know. Like really incredible match. I gave it a star rating. I would say 4.25, because to me, like the generic Ibushi exchange is so fucking good that it pretty much makes up for the other issues with the match, which are obviously like the splitting up pins is pretty stupid, and the once Kota finally pins him with the Avalanche Poison Rana, like they just start going to really quick eliminations, and it almost feels like they could have organized the end of the match better or laid it out better. But like those are the big flaws. But like the fucking Ibushi Generico stuff is just so good that you still go. I still went 4+. I mean, still an incredible match.
Yeah, I would be the same. I mean, I don't know exactly what I'd rate it, but definitely 4+. And I think that's what separates it from, the literally hundreds of other similar style matches that have happened since. It's just the level of work. It's just, another level. So I'm glad I watched it again. And it's a match I watch maybe once every 3 or 4 years. I think also the fact that Chikara made it accessible has sort of helped the legend as well, because it's been on YouTube since 2011.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about a match that's been out there for a decade for people to see, whereas maybe some other matches just get lost to time because they're on DVDs or behind paywalls somewhere.
I mean, speaking of paywalls, I mean, if you're bored, which obviously many of us are right now, that Chikaratopia thing has all of their shows, I think. And I don't subscribe to it always, but like if I ever get the urge to watch Chikara from that period, I just I subscribe to it for like a month and just go through a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, I mean, Chikaratopia has all that stuff. So if you ever wanted to watch, the peak Chikara and see all these fucking King of Tree, I mean, I think it's worth whatever the fuck they're charging. I think like $7 or something, like just to watch a bunch of King of Trios, So that could be a fun little thing to relive, if anyone wants to do that. But yeah, I mean, and like that entire 2010 year with the BDK, I mean, that's like probably the most fun period to follow show by show too. So, very, very cool stuff there. So let me move on to my second pick, which is Shinshiro Takagi versus Minoru Suzuki from DDT, June 1st, 2017. This is obviously available on DDT Universe if you subscribe to that. There is an illicit link to it that I gave Joe that I cannot, in good conscience, give in the show description here. But if you look online, you can find it on, I think, Daily Motion. So if you Google it, you'll find it. But first of all, I picked this match because I feel like, these quote-unquote cinematic matches are obviously in the news right now with the Mania stuff and all this fucking other shit. So I wanted to pick one that I actually enjoyed and see what you thought of it. I also figured you never watched it. Did you watch this before or no?
No, I never saw this.
Okay, so I figured you never did. So I wanted to hear, I guess, what you thought of it and like how you thought it compared to the fucking WWE cinematic matches you sat through. And just, I guess, what your general thoughts are on this. It's obviously a comedy match, which I don't think any of the WWE stuff was, except maybe, I don't know, was Cena Bray a comedy match, I guess? I don't know.
Elements of the Boneyard match were kind of meant to be tongue-in-cheek and campy, but no, they didn't do any straight-up comedy matches.
Yeah, this was definitely a comedy match, but, it's for people who don't know, it's an empty Tokyo Dome. They start with the the baseball field on Tokyo Dome, because again, if you don't know, the Tokyo Dome between wrestling shows, normally hosts a baseball team in Japan's top flight baseball league, the Yomiuri Giants, the big the team that they're basically, they are the Yankees of Japanese baseball. Pretty much, I think it's like half the country, basically, like half the baseball fans in the entire country are fans of this one team, or maybe it's more than half even, compared to the 11 other teams. So they're just a juggernaut in Japanese baseball. But yeah, so they're in the baseball diamond, and they go all over into the what's it called, like the into the stands and like the food areas, and they fight into the backstage, and there's all these guest stars that I know you're not going to know a lot of the guest stars because a lot of them are DDT wrestlers, but some of them you will know. I don't know. I'm sure you recognize Saki Akai, but
well,
she has a distinctive look.
Jun Kasai as the janitor.
Yeah, that's great too. Jun Kasai is the janitor. There's what's his name? Ken Oka, who's like begging. The high of the match to me is Ken Oka begging the people who run the Tokyo Dome to let him book the Tokyo Dome for a Gambare show, his weird little offshoot DT, and he's offering them like $1,000 in yen to book the Tokyo Dome, which I'm sure, obviously, the Tokyo Dome costs a lot more money than that. But yeah, it is really funny. But yeah, I guess give me your thought. Oh, and there's also Shinsuke and the fake Hiroshi Tanahashi from the cosplay wrestling are there too at one point. So.
Yeah, and then when they get to the bullpen, you got a pitcher warming up, and who's sitting there watching the pitcher war? It's Tenryu. It's Tenryu. Yeah. So
Mako is here too. She's pitching.
That's right. And she throws a ball at Suzuki's head. She throws a beanball at Suzuki's head.
He gets very angry. Suzuki is incredible in this entire match.
He had a good batting stance. I feel like he's played baseball before. Like he looked natural in the box. I was assessing his batting stance as he stood in against Miko, who was a horrible pitcher. Didn't give him anything to hit, but it looked like he knew what he was doing in there. It looked like he had a clue. But
yeah, you're obviously you're big baseball fans. That's another good reason to pick. I didn't even think of that, but I'm sure you haven't watched a lot of the NPB. But I
can't say I have. But
maybe it'll come back before our baseball. So
they probably will. But look, I was dreading watching this because I saw it was like 45 minutes long, and I'm like, do I really want to watch these two guys just walk and brawl throughout the Tokyo Dome? So I had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't realize that there were all these cameos from basically the entire DDT roster. One of the first spots in the match is they do a hold and then they do a rope break on the base. So they do a base break. so he reaches out to touch the base, and then the referee is calling for a base break.
And he goes safe.
yes, he's yelling safe, and Suzuki has to break the hold. He's confused. So then they go brawling around. It was just silly, goofy fun. A little long for my taste, but it never took itself too seriously, and I thought that it was going to. I don't know why, since it was DDT, but for whatever reason, I had this impression that it was just going to be some long ass, boring walk-in brawl that I was going to hate. There was the recurring bit with the guy getting kicked down the stairs.
Oh yeah, Kota Ibushi, dude. He's supposed to be Kota Ibushi's like Mirror Universe guy. I don't know. I figured you didn't know the backstory there, but Kota loves him. Kota loves him. They're like best friends. So
he keeps getting involved, and Suzuki would kick him in the face and kick him down the stairs, and then 10 minutes later he'd pop up again and he'd get kicked down the stairs again. And then they go brawling into this janitor's mopping up the floor, and they're interrupting the man's work. And it turns out it's Jun Kasai, and he gets involved. And then I think he puts Ken Oka through a table.
Yes.
So
and Saki Akai is a beer girl, which that takes some explanation. So I've been to these Japanese baseball games a couple of times when I've gone over there, and one of the most incredible parts of attending a Japanese baseball game is they will bring draft beer and like these lemon sours to you with these women that walk up and down these stairs with these giant fucking I don't even know how to describe it. It's like a fucking backpack with a giant beer fucking container, like a beer keg they're wearing a beer keg, and they're running up and down these stairs. And these girls, Saki here, walks around slowly. These girls are running up and down these fucking staircases the entire game. Like every single staircase has their own girl basically, and they're just running up and down and running up and down, and they're bringing you like there's one for each like type of Japanese beer. They don't have exclusivity the way American ballparks do. I think there's a law against it actually, which is kind of funny. But like, so whereas American ballpark, you can only order, let's say, I know Yankee Stadium is like only Budweiser. In this Japanese ballpark, they have all these competing beers like Asahi, Kirin, Sapporo, whatever the fuck the other one is. I don't remember. But like they're like premium malts or something, and they're running up and down, and like they're basically all competing. And they even have like different fucking lemon sour brands. So if you don't like this brand of lemon sour, if you don't like the Asahi lemon sour, you can get the fucking Sapporo lemon sour. So it's a long explanation I'm giving for no reason. But these girls just run up and down with these fucking beer kegs, and they're selling you like these beers, these draft beers for $5 you see. It's one of the most incredible parts of going to a Japanese baseball game, I think. But yeah, that's what Saki Kai was doing. She was a beer girl offering beer, and Minoru Suzuki tries to buy the beer from her, but he doesn't have any money because he's in his fucking wrestling tights. So she refuses to give him the beer, obviously. That was one of my favorite. That was my favorite spot, probably.
What was the bit with the guy that wears the mask who fucks around with the panda? What's his name? The guy that wears the Sacha Hoko. What's his name? The guy that wears the mask.
You're talking about
Sanda Hoko.
Yeah.
What the hell? Whatever that dude.
Yeah.
So he had
about a Sachi Hoko machine, I think.
And he had a laptop, and it was doing something on a laptop. What was that bit?
So you're talking Super Sasadango machine. That's him.
That's him.
Yeah, I don't know why I said you said Sachi Hoko right there. Super Sasadango. So Super Sasadango machine. He always does. You ever seen those PowerPoint presentations?
Yes.
So he's the guy who does the PowerPoint presentation, and he was trying to get what's on his laptop onto the giant scoreboard in the Tokyo Dome. But I think he was saying something like the Wi-Fi is failing or something. Like I assume they couldn't do that. So yeah, that was the joke that he couldn't. That he wanted to show his PowerPoint presentation, which WWE totally ripped off with Drew Gulak, by the way, because Sasadango has been doing this for like a decade. But he wanted to do his PowerPoint, on the giant Tokyo Dome scoreboard, and he couldn't get it to work. So that was the joke. And then Minoru Suzuki like pulls his mask off and is like shocked that it's Muscle Sakai under there because he thought he retired years ago, which he did. That was the joke. So, but he came back under this mask. So,
what are you making me watch here? I mean.
Look, you said you enjoyed it. It
was fun. Yeah, I mean, it was fine. I mean, it was a pleasant surprise because I thought it was going to be something that I really didn't want to watch at all and that I was going to hate. But it was so tongue-in-cheek and so goofy and so over the top that even some of the references that I didn't get that went over my head, they were still goofy enough to where they were amusing, like the one we just talked about. Like I had no idea what he was talking about with the laptop, but here's this goofball in a mask struggling to get on into the frame with this laptop, and
he starts like I think he starts by saying like Mina-san or something, like, which is everyone, and there's nobody there. So he's talking to nobody, but like that's basically the joke, and he's like trying to start talking about his fucking presentation, and just his presentation doesn't work. I love Sasadango. He's one of those guys that like, obviously total comedy wrestler, but just he's actually funny, which many American indie comedy wrestlers are not anymore. So
they go into the bullpen. I thought it was funny that the pitcher never stopped warming up. Like these two men come brawling into the bullpen, but that guy, he's focused. He's got to do his work. So he's working on his curveball in there, and nothing's going to stop him. And then for some reason, Tenru's sitting there watching the guy warm up. So it's just utterly ridiculous. And then they go back on the field and
the brawl.
The brawl on the field. Miko first, she can't even, her pitches are nowhere near the plate. And Suzuki's getting frustrated. So she steps up a little closer and then throws the ball right over his head. I mean, that easily could have gone badly. I mean, because she clearly is not great at throwing a baseball to begin with. And that could have gone very badly. And then it breaks into a giant brawl. He gives the Gotch pile driver on home plate and puts him away. So it's just utterly ridiculous. I mean, you're going to ask me to star rate this thing, and I'm going to tell you.
No, I don't. You don't have to star rate this.
How the hell?
No. Here's what I do want to know though. Was this better than the Mania stuff?
If I would have understood the references, I would have been more like, okay. In other words, if WWE would have done this and I would have gotten all the references, I probably would have enjoyed it more than the other stuff WWE did. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the funniest joke in the entire thing probably is one you should have been able to understand with the fake Shinsuke and Hiroshi Tanahashi fighting each other, because those two have fought each other in the Tokyo Dome like 100 times.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the first time I watched that, I was like, that was a part where I was like crying with laughter. So, I thought that was really funny. And that was really clever to get those impersonators.
And he beats the shit out of both of them, and So, I mean, it was just harmless fun. I don't know if I needed 50 minutes of it, but if I was a big time DDT fan and it was all landing for me, then the length wouldn't have bothered me either. But pleasantly surprised that it was something I thought that it wasn't going to be.
So there you go. That's the DDT match. So the final match we're going to talk about. This is the one we put up to a poll. You had chosen the Rockers against the Orient Express, and I put up Austin versus Benoit from SmackDown in May of 2001. And this was like the closest poll I think in Omakase history when I've done these. Like I've done these polls for the fantasy draft episodes and stuff. This one, it just kept going back and forth with 51-49, 51-49. And finally, by the end of the 2 days, after 110 people voted, Austin versus Benoit from SmackDown in May won the poll with 52% to 48%. So very close, but people ultimately went with the crippler, Chris Benoit. Now, why I picked this one is because Chris Benoit's name has been in the news lately. First of all, because we had the Dark Side of the Ring episode, obviously, and then WWE decided right after the fucking Dark Side of the Ring aired, let's do a fucking exercise machine choke spot. That's in that Edge and Randy Orton.
Unbelievable.
So I felt like, okay, if they're going to do that, then we can watch a classic Benoit match. And one of the things I've been watching, one of the things I've just been watching on my own time, for some reason I was watching the weekly television on WWE Network after WrestleMania. I watched WrestleMania X7, which is obviously one of the best shows of all time. I started there, and then I watched all the weekly television after that because it's a period that I feel like, that period is not well remembered, as being good, or and it's a very weird period, and there's a lot of stuff on the TV that I had no memory of. Did you know that they did a long babyface push for Raven during that period, which they totally abandoned, obviously, when the invasion started. But I totally forgot that he was a babyface on WWE TV for months in 2001. But yeah, I watched that period. I remember liking it as a kid, more than the reputation of it, especially, people really didn't like, I guess, the Undertaker and Kane got such a big push against Austin and Hunter. And, to set this up, I don't know how much you remember that period, but it's one of those things where even the stuff that I'm sure people didn't like when they lived through, when you watch it with 19 years later, at least it feels like you're watching professional wrestling, right? That's the best way I can put it. It just feels more, it feels like you're watching a fucking wrestling show, which 2020 WWE, even before the fucking empty arena shit, barely feels like a wrestling show, And so I think it's been so bad for the last fucking decade that when you go back and watch periods that weren't considered great at the time, which is certainly this period, and even something like 95 or 96 WWF, it holds up a lot better because at least it's fucking wrestling, which the last decade really has not been wrestling. So I don't know if that makes sense at all, but
no, this is a good period in WWE history. It is.
Well, people really did not like this period at the time. If you go back and read stuff, I think a lot of people did not. People were really pissed at that Austin turn.
Well, it's
people
the Austin
were really
turn.
pissed.
Yeah.
Right. And people were pissed that Undertaker and Kane got such a big push after Mania. There's a lot of stuff to not like. I will say, in the interest of full disclosure, and one of the reasons why I picked this match, I love heel Austin. I mean, I think they shouldn't have done it from a business perspective, but he was so fucking great as a heel. And I think this match, if you go back and watch it, I mean, he was just like, I don't know. He was just incredible here, like selling for Benoit and just bumping all over the place. And just like, they're in Benoit's hometown here. This is his second title defense of the week, actually, or second title shot of the week, where he had gotten a shot on Raw in Calgary. And that's when they did the Vince McMahon ring the bell. When Austin put Benoit on the crossface, Vince was like, I had a plan. They had shown the Hart family, other than Brett, obviously, at ringside, and Vince decided to do the fucking Montreal finish in front of them because he was such an asshole even back then. But yeah, that match is good. But then the SmackDown match, they're in Edmonton, which is Benoit's hometown, and this match is incredible. I mean, you can give me your thoughts on it, obviously, in a second. But I love this fucking match. And, Benoit he debuts the 10 Germans here. It's the first time I think he ever did the 10 straight Germans. The crowd is going insane. The crowd loves Chris Benoit, which, is a little awkward, I guess, in hindsight. But like, it's now long enough.
Does that stuff bother you? Because it doesn't bother me. It's so
far removed. It bothered me for a long time, but like now it's been so long that I can go back and watch. And I watched Benoit first, like in New Japan and in WCW, probably. I never really went back and watched this period of the WWF. So I started probably more with New Japan and WCW in the 90s. And, after a while, really, I would say like a few years ago is when it really stopped bothering me. And I'm like, well, he was a great wrestler. I can enjoy, his amazing wrestling. And there's still some stuff they say where they'll be like, Benoit's a murderer in there or something, or he's a killer. I'm like, oh, okay. But other than that, like, yeah, I can watch him now. It doesn't bother me.
To me, it's just historical footage. I don't view it through any other lens. It's no different to me than watching an O.J. Simpson highlight during an NFL package or something. I don't connect the two, and I'm not begrudging anyone that does. If it makes you uncomfortable, it makes you uncomfortable. Who am I to tell you what makes you uncomfortable? But for me, I've never really viewed it like that. I just view it as it happened. It's part of history. It's historical footage. I enjoy wrestling history. I respect wrestling history. I like looking back at old wrestling, and he's part of it. And I can't.
And he was really good. I mean, I hate to tell people try to pretend he wasn't now. I mean, look, he was he was an incredible pro wrestler. I mean, what do you want me to tell
and there's a lot of, look, he's the most deplorable, but there's a lot of other deplorable people throughout the history of pro wrestling, I don't just, you can acknowledge that, look, I'm not a remember the wrestler guy. I never have been, and that's not what I'm saying here, but it's like, you can acknowledge that the guy was good at what he did and also find what he did deplorable. And I can parse those things out in my mind. I don't even, it's impossible not to think about, like when I'm watching a show and a Benoit match comes on, of course you instantly think about it. Oh shit, but it doesn't consume my thoughts, and it doesn't ruin what, my enjoyment of what I'm watching is what I'm getting at. I don't know if that makes me a monster, but it seems like you're kind of on a similar wavelength.
Yeah, I mean, I can watch them. I don't know. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
But like, as far as, I don't know how you feel about heel Austin, but I like, this is probably up there with like 97 for my favorite period of his career. I mean, he was so fucking good.
My notes, and this is verbatim, say talk about Austin's heel work, because Austin absolutely was a great heel worker. And you got to remember, here's the thing about Austin. He spent the majority of his career as a heel. He was a heel in Texas. He was a heel for all 4 or 5 years that he spent in WCW. He was a heel when he first came to WWF. Even when he was a babyface, he worked like a heel. I mean, the Stone Cold Steve Austin character was basically behaved, cut promos, and worked like a heel. So then he turns heel, and it was like no adjustment for him. And he was always a great heel worker.
Here's the thing about that heel turn, right? I mean, if they had come up with a better reason for why he wanted to join Vince McMahon, I think it would have worked a lot better. Like, watching through all this stuff, him as a heel, it feels fucking natural. I mean, when he gives that interview with JR on the SmackDown right after Mania, he says to JR, he's like, when have I ever said that I love the World Wrestling Federation fans? I want to be the role model for their fans. Have I ever said that? And JR's like, no, you haven't. I'm like, that's fine. I mean, that makes complete sense. The problem with that turn was they never came up with a good reason for why he would want to join up with Vince after all this time and all the shit Vince did to him, and especially why he wanted to join up with Hunter Hearst Helmsley after Triple H tried to have him killed. I mean, they never explained that at all. So that was those were the big problems. And if they had turned Hunter on that Raw after Mania as a tease, and the crowd went crazy when he came down with that sledgehammer, I think everything would have been way better in that period. But they did what they did. I mean, what are you going to do?
Outside of all of those reasons, which are very good, the fans just weren't ready to turn on him yet.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, obviously,
it's just the timing wasn't right, and
he had just come back from from the neck injury in October of 2000. So the fans still wanted to see him kick ass. Basically, I think if they did this in Mania in 2002, it might have really gone over a lot better. If they gotten a year and a half of him kicking ass.
Yeah, the best time to pull the trigger on a big heel turn, and I mean a big one, not some mid-carder, but a big star like this, is when you first start to see the signs that some of the people are getting a little tired of his act. Yeah. Here's a good example of a perfect timing for a heel turn. Hulk Hogan joining the NWO.
Right.
The whole yellow and red thing was starting to run out of steam. You were seeing the signs, and that's the time to pull the trigger. You don't want to wait too long either. You don't want the fans to do it for you. If the fans do it for you, you waited too long. But the Austin one was just too soon because people still wanted to cheer for him. So that had a big effect on it too.
Now, once Austin turns back, in late 2001, you kind of understand his mindset for why he wanted the turn so bad, because there's nothing left for him to do as a babyface. And it was never the same in part because of the heel turn. But that whole period after he turns back after Survivor Series 2001, I mean, he just it never feels like anything clicks, really. It never feels like he's, doing anything interesting. So it totally makes sense why he wanted to do the heel turn. But yeah, they didn't time it well. They should have given him a longer period of time as a babyface after he came back, and then
I think Vince should have had better instincts and because it was Austin's idea. And
yeah, Austin really wanted to do it. Yeah,
he personally creatively felt it was stale. So he just wanted to do something different, which I understand, but Vince should have had better instincts to say, all right, that's, we need to hold off on this until the people are ready for it. And to me, that was the biggest issue.
I mean, you can look at this basically as the first time that Vince really lost it, right? It's this is his big error that just ran so many people off. And then the invasion is a disaster. And then everything just keeps going down from there, and
continues to lose the plot at every step of the way. But
I mean, by what 08 or something, they're just it's just not anything anymore.
And it's funny because I mentioned I like this era. I was never an Attitude Era guy. I always preferred that year and a half right before the Attitude Era, which I thought was awesome. The build up to Montreal, I mean, all that Bret Hart stuff, and from late 95 to Survivor Series 97, that's my shit. And
I totally agree.
That's great. And the period right after that we're talking about now, I thought there's so much good stuff. I think just a week and a half before this match was the match where Triple H blew out his quads, right? That was right around this time.
Yeah.
So that was on a Raw. I don't think it was on the Raw that week. I think it was on the Raw.
It was the Raw the night after Judgment Day.
Yeah, so so you had that great tag match, which is a legendary match, and there's a lot of good stuff here that I think, because of the Austin turn went so badly and they lost a lot of fans at that point, I think this era here, right? It's between the Attitude Era and before Ruthless Aggression, right? It's the sort of lost mini era, and I think it kind of gets a bad rap historically. Yeah. I think if people go back and watch some of this stuff, it's pretty damn good.
I mean, 2000 is really good too. The problem really is 98 and 99, which are two of the worst fucking years, which people love, obviously, because it's the Attitude Era and you grew up with it. But I mean, if you go back and try to watch that shit, it's completely unwatchable.
So, oh yeah, without question. I mean, the only rewatch value is for historical purposes.
Yeah. If you're watching 90, but yeah, like you said, 97 is awesome. I don't know how you feel about 2000. I think 2000 is pretty awesome. And then 2001 is pretty much what I was just trying to say, I guess, is a hot take, but apparently you agree with me. The wrestling quality is really good, and like a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff is, and like Austin's heel stuff is a lot of it's really good. And the problem is the invasion is really awful and like kind of kills the year to a degree. But even then, you still had Austin and Angle suplex the shit out of each other, and RVD's rise and everything. Like there's still good stuff. So 2001 is a real. I enjoy that year a lot, and watching it back now, I mean it does hold up, and just it comes off as like a much better year than like anything recently for sure.
Do you consider it Attitude Era, or do you consider it ending at the heel turn?
I think it's I think the Attitude Era ends at X7 to me.
Yeah,
I think everything after that is like the weird transition period. Like 01, 02 is like this weird transition period, and then I guess you could say Ruthless Aggression really starts in like 03 probably. Which I mean I still enjoy WWE from like 01 through like I don't know, like to me the last year that I remember really liking it was like 07 probably.
So
like
through the SmackDown 6 and all that, which was very good.
I mean, like from 03 to 07 is wildly inconsistent, and there's a lot of, there's still a lot of bad stuff. But like, the problem was basically once you lose all the guys that came up, but before it became the fucking pre-programmed robots, and that's where it dies, right? I mean, that's where like it's never the same after. I mean, once you lose Shawn and Jericho, and Benoit and Eddie die, and you lose all these guys at that point. Once it's like just whatever's left from the fucking factory that they turned out. I mean, that's pretty much it.
You can look at it from once they were cultivating their own talent because there was nowhere else to get talent from because they had destroyed everybody else.
And there's little periods after that where like that are kind of interesting, like CM Punk does some interesting stuff, and obviously there's the Daniel Bryan mania, but to me it's never the same after like 07. I think,
and it has felt the same for the last 12 or 13 years. It just aesthetically and everything else, which doesn't help.
Yeah, but yeah, 2001. If you're interested in going back and watching that stuff, I think you'll find there's a lot more. And we barely talked about the match, but like, man, the match is great. I
mean, that's the thing. Like Austin's heel work, even though the heel turn didn't work for business reasons and all of those sorts of things. That's the good thing about going back and watching older wrestling, because you don't have to assess it through that lens, because we know what happens in terms of business and why that was a mistake. But just breaking down his work. I mean, Austin is so good in this match because he knows how to work heel. And it's not that much of a derivative from when he was working baby. It's just less facial expressions, less playing to the crowd. He changes his mannerisms up a little bit. And basically he worked heel his whole career anyway. So he knew what to do. And he knew how to work a match like this against a babyface in their hometown. And, you had the looming presence of Vince McMahon or Mr. McMahon as the referee outside the ring. And I'm just watching this and I'm thinking, man, did they give away a lot on TV? I mean, it's an Austin main event. There's a Kurt Angle Jericho match on this show. There's an Edge versus Kane Intercontinental title match on this show. This is like a pay-per-view on SmackDown.
Well, this period in general, they used to. I mean, look, I don't know what the fuck I can't tell you what the weekly television is like now. I haven't watched it in fucking 7 years or something. I assume they're not like doing this anymore. I assume they don't load up the shows like they load up these shows. But yeah, I mean, like, they were building to this Austin, Benoit, Jericho 3-way at King of the Ring, which was a show I was at, by the way, because that was at the Meadowlands. And yeah, they had all of these Austin. I don't know. They gave away like 2 Austin Benoit title matches, and then I think the next week on Raw is an Austin Jericho title match. So yeah, they were willing to do that because they were building to this 3-way.
The tag match. You know what it was? I think it was Jericho and Benoit. It was Austin and McMahon challenging for the tag titles. I think.
Yes, I remember that. I just watched that actually. That was really good.
Yeah.
But,
actually
no. Well, it wasn't. Well, the match itself barely happened actually because they brought up the APA first to beat them up, and then they brought out Big Show and Rhino to beat them up, and then finally Austin McMahon came out. But the comeback was incredible.
See, it just goes to show. Like, I remember this era better than the Attitude Era because I was so checked out of the Attitude Era. Yeah. It's weird. And most people, it's the opposite. Like, they remember every detail about the Attitude Era, and then the stuff that came after, because a lot of people lost interest. But yeah, this match kicked ass. This is just a kick-ass wrestling match. And a great main event.
Like a 4-star match, I think.
Right around that neighborhood. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
People have never seen it, I think it's a really interesting little historical curiosity of Benoit in his hometown against this heel Austin, which, like I said, I'm always one of these people that wants people to go back and see that heel Austin period, because like you're saying, it's a failure from a business standpoint, but he was just so good.
None of that matters on rewatch. You can just enjoy the stories and the matches for what they are.
It's the same kind of thing, but there's so many examples of that in history where here's a good one, Babyface Naito, where even one of the biggest Naito fans on the planet would tell you that was not a success from a business standpoint. He was a flop as a top babyface, but that doesn't mean you can't go back and watch those matches now and be like, man, he was great. Like those Ishii matches, that Okada match in 2012 and stuff. So even though it was a failure, you can still go back now and watch it and be like, he was a great babyface. I mean, he was awesome, but it just didn't, it didn't click for whatever reason. Whereas same thing with this heel Austin run, where it's I think he was just an incredible heel. But it just didn't work.
Right. But the matches and the stories, you may have been distracted in real time because you're well, this isn't work. Well, now you're removed from that. And since it doesn't matter anymore, you can just enjoy this stuff for what it is.
Yeah. So there you go. That's our first little attempt here at the 5 matches format. I thought this was fun. I had a good time. I don't know how you felt about it, but
I hated every second of it. Don't ever bring me on this wretched show again.
All right. I'll keep that in mind. But I hope you, the listener, enjoyed it. And I hope, because we're going to be doing it for probably another month and a half at least. Joe, before I get into, I guess, next week's show, why don't you plug everything, including the new tier of the flagship Patreon.
Voices of Wrestling flagship podcast. I'm sure everybody listening is at least aware of it, even if you don't listen to it. Give it a shot. We go 3 hours every single week. And now we go live on our latest tier, on our subscription package behind the Patreon wall. For $10 a month, you can listen to the flagship live as it happens. So if you're a big fan of the show and you don't want to wait for the uploads 24 to 48 hours after we record, you can listen to the show as it happens. If you hate me and you hate the show, you can listen live, and you can listen to all of my off-color and problematic comments before Rich edits them out. And you can put them online, and you can cancel me for the 19th time. So there's even an angle there if you don't like me to subscribe to the $10 tier, so you can try to catch me saying problematic things. There's other tiers behind the paywall as well. The $5 tier will get you nearly everything we do, everything with the exception of the live content. And there's written content behind the paywall. There's even a $1 tier, which is a trial tier where you can sample selected bits that we price at the $1 mark and then decide if you want to fully commit to the $5 or the $10 package. So if you are not a subscriber, check us out, voicesofwrestling.com/Patreon, and see what we have to offer and give us a shot.
And then as far as this show next week, obviously, first of all, you can follow us on Twitter at Omakase, Wrestling One Vet, and you can also, that's where you want to go from now on to do to vote. So if you really wanted Rockers Resort Express instead of Benoit Austin, you'll get your chance next week to vote on whatever the 2 matches are to pick our 5th match. Next week, we're going to continue with this format, and my guest will be Kevin Brown from the Bad Wrestling Podcast. So who knows what horrors he has in store for me.
He's going to give you horrendous matches. You realize
he's going to pick 2 awful fucking matches and then a 3rd awful meme match that will crush whatever I pick in the poll.
Yeah, first of all, you're doing all 3 of his matches. That's number 1. And number 2, I was nice to you. I gave you some matches I figured you'd enjoy. Okay.
Yeah.
You're getting total trash. He is burying you 6 feet under with these matches.
But I'm going to get him back by making him sit through some fucking 40-minute New Japan match he's going to hate. So
there you go.
There you go.
It'll be a very contentious show as opposed to this one where we got along well.
Yeah, well, I don't think there was anything either one of us didn't like. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, so folks, that'll do it. Thank you all for listening as always. And next week, like I said, me and Kevin will be back to continue this format. If I wanted to also mention, if there's anyone you want to suggest as a guest for this format, definitely get at me on Twitter or the Discords if there's anybody you think you'd like to hear pick their masters and stuff. I have a bunch of people in mind, so maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't, but I'm definitely always open to suggestions. So folks, thank you as always for listening, and we will see you next time.